Hi everyone, you're all very welcome to another trader interview here at Alpha Capital Group. Today we have James with us, one of our funded traders. Obviously getting to know a bit more about him, his style of trading, a bit about his background, and again what his future long-term objectives are going to be, both for himself and obviously going forward over the next months and years ahead. So obviously James, very, very welcome aboard. Lovely to have you this morning for a call. Firstly, do you want to maybe talk us through a bit about yourself, a bit about your style, a bit about your background and how you actually got into trading?
Yeah, sure. So I had quite a one of the more social media approaches to trading. I think when I first started, I was drawn into one of these trading signals groups, as it were, that don't seem to be quite so prevalent now, thankfully. But yeah, obviously I won't name them, but they were a bit ropey to say the least. They were eventually closed down by the FCA. But I'm almost quite grateful for the guy that took me in, so to say, because that's where I really got interested in trading. Otherwise, I don't think I would have come across it quite so early and had the ups and downs or whatever. So when they were shut down, I was like, this was 2018. I was like, I really want to learn to be able to do it for myself and not have to rely on signals, because at the time it was like, oh, I must find another signals group,
Yeah.
They promise you like, oh, make a grand a week sort of thing. You're like, oh, brilliant when you're naive. But
Yeah.
yeah, so I eventually just found a basic course online, and trend lines, Fibonacci, everything like that. And that was really what piqued my interest, because I saw what the potential of it was.
Okay.
And yeah, so I then went on to a friend of a friend who taught me how to trade a bit better, and that's where it started to kick off. I started to play around with a few grand in my own account, make some losses, make some wins. Make stupid losses, blow accounts. Obviously, it's all in the it's all in the journey, isn't it?
Yeah,
But,
absolutely.
yeah, but I'm grateful for them because it taught me exactly what not to do, and I think that's the most important thing to learn first, is
Yeah.
what not to do.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then after playing around with a couple of prop firms and finding the good and the bad, the ugly, and amongst them, I found you guys, and it's been a really nice first couple of weeks with you guys.
Okay,
Yeah.
good. And I suppose, right, in hindsight, I know obviously you're piquing your interest, you got into it. Was it the allure of money, a secondary income? Why did you proceed, or why did you decide to proceed the trading route? Like what was, I suppose, the peak rationale as to why you kind of got into trading?
I think I had one of those sort of light bulb moments where I was like, I'm not going to be able to make the money I want to be able to make at work. I'm an engineer by trade, and I absolutely love engineering, but it's just simple. I'm not going to be able to make the type of money I'd like to be able to make and have the lifestyle I'd like to have, pursuing that. But so I think that's what nudged me in this direction. I saw the potential, and
Okay,
yeah.
interesting, brilliant. Okay, and now obviously you talked about your style of trading. So you talked initially about the trend lines and trend and so on. What type of trading strategy are you implementing now currently at present? Is it
So at the
based off of the
moment,
same provisions, or is it something quite new?
so I started to look into the whole supply and demand route about 2 years ago during lockdown, and followed a few guys I knew that were um, doing in-person courses and that sort of stuff in London at the time, during the little breaks between lockdowns. And that really interested me, because you see the whole, you see it from the other side of the telescope, so to say. You can see what's going on in the market a bit better, I think, where price is moving to and why. So I use that for my lower time frames during the week, and then at the beginning of the week I'll use my trend lines and Fibonacci's to mark out where the market direction is going in general. So
Okay.
I'm not buying into sells and that sort of thing.
Yeah, of course.
Um,
You're trying to get a
yeah,
broader dynamic of market bias, really, isn't it?
exactly. Yeah.
Brilliant. Okay, brilliant. And you're obviously talking there about the time frames and that approach. Do you solely use technical analysis, or would you bring fundamentals into a consideration, or is it just all chart work, looking at specific price action levels, structures, and making informed decisions off the back of that?
I'd say at the moment it's probably about 80% technicals, and the 20% is me taking into account the fundamentals, because obviously they do affect the market, like we saw yesterday with the yen during the bank rate. That
Yeah.
pound flew miles high, but then came right back down to where we expected it to be anyway. So
Yeah.
I think it's important to take it into consideration, but I don't necessarily base my trading off it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Brilliant. Fantastic. Okay, brilliant. And I suppose your journey, your trials, your tribulations, you've seen the good, the bad, the ugly in everything. How do you, and I suppose one thing you talked about there was your losses. And I suppose with losses obviously becomes discipline, I'm sure. Being able to handle the emotional mindset and the emotional elements. How do you handle your emotions? I presume you've learned, I know from experience, you've obviously learned from the previous, but risk is obviously a centralized aspect to help you deal with those emotions now, I presume.
So I've been trading for about 4 years now, give or take, and I'd say for about 75% of that, the bad trades would almost turn into gambles. I think we've all come across that at some point,
Yeah.
revenge trade. And at the time, I started to implement on the software. So you can see the MetaTrader terminal behind me.
Yeah.
I've actually got EAs running on there that will stop me from trading. So you've obviously got your own set drawdowns at Alpha.
Yeah.
But I will implement my own on the software on MetaTrader. So it'll just block me from trading if I hit a certain amount. So even if I do get to the point where I'm like, I want to revenge trade this, I can't.
You can't.
But,
Yeah. That's a very, very good control. And I think you're going to get a lot of messages saying, James, what EA are you using? Definitely, for
there
sure.
are some good ones out there. There are some good ones out there. That's definitely. I mean, it's important to be able to do it in your own mind, obviously, and I'm getting better and better at that every day. But I think whilst you're on that journey, it's good to have a physical stop on your own account.
It's like hard coding to ensure that, right, if your risk is 2% or 3% and you have a set allocation within your trading plan or trading strategy, say, well, look, even if I am tempted to maybe over leverage or take a few more positions, having that reinforcement, I think it's nearly like a school teacher student approach, whereby you're not allowed to do this, and it's like someone nearly looking over your shoulder. I suppose having that EA is quite important as well to obviously hard code that. So you're obviously quite strong with the technical side. You've obviously got a fairly good grasp now of the risk, or constantly trying to improve that. I suppose from your perspective, back testing is also really, really important as well. So knowing what works, what doesn't work. Do you imply back testing? Would you have used that much in the past?
I did a lot of back testing during lockdown. Obviously, I was still working during lockdown, but in my spare time, it wasn't really something I'd heard of much at the time, which is weird, because you'd always assume you'd want to test your own strategy. But at the time, someone was like, you back tested this. And I was like, what the hell is that? So they showed me, and I got the pro version of TradingView at the time, which lets you do the replay. Obviously, you can get it on all different types of software. But and I think it's just going through all the different scenarios as you would take them. So rewinding the chart to a specific point in the day, marking out your zones or your lines, whatever your strategy is, and then letting the market play out till it hits where you think you would enter, and then assessing your plan and implementing it at that point. So you're not swayed by, obviously you already know which way the market's going to go after that, because it's already happened. But you've got to try and block that out and just say, well, I would sell here because X, Y, Z, and this is what's in the plan. I'm going to sell. And then you just got to mark out your hit rates and your risk and everything.
I think with that, there's a lot of honesty and truth really in it too, really, isn't it? Because like, obviously, when you're back testing, you know where the data is starting from, ending from, etc. But you have to be true and honest to yourself to making sure, right, this is the strategy, these are the things that I'm utilizing, and then making sure, are these actually proven to be successful? Are these going to generate the results that I need to be profitable? I think that's obviously quite important, because then you can quantify at the end, right, what your profitability is, what your drawdowns are, what your risk should be, or whatever. And then you can obviously try and journal that, so you can then review your data as you see fit. So I presume you obviously journal as well. You look at your results. You're constantly looking at your metrics and data, I would presume as well. Yeah.
Yeah, I keep it all on spreadsheets and everything, but obviously the traders dashboard that you guys have got is excellent because it's got a journal on there.
Mm.
So I'd recommend, if no one's looked at that yet, to dive deep into the dashboard on the Alpha website, because it took me a little while to find, but obviously you know that there's a little journal bit at the end. Every single trade that you place, you can type your entry points and why you took it.
Yeah,
it's a very handy bit of software. So
it's quite important. It's quite important. So I know obviously with your journal, are you a higher time frame guy? Are you a lower time frame guy? When you're trading, are you trading more often? Are you trading looking for quality? What would be like the duration of the trades? What are the length, or what is the time frames that you're utilizing?
I tend to linger around the 30-minute, 15-minute time frame. I like to get a general picture of the market and then drop down to the 15, which I find the best personally for me. And my trade's probably from about half an hour up to about 4 hours. I don't tend to like to stay in too long. I rarely hold overnight, but yeah, it's the lower end of things. Not quite scalping, obviously.
Yeah. It's trying to find that middle ground. You would be kind of a traditional day trader, really, wouldn't you? I think that's really probably the best analogy. Brilliant. Okay, so we've talked about a lot about your strategy. So I suppose you've obviously got your background from the engineering. So do you think the engineering career that you've taken, do you think that's helped you with the analytical side? Because obviously engineering in a lot of degrees, well, depending whether it's civil or mechanical, some of those professions can be very hands-on, very technical. Do you find that has helped or aided your trading element?
I think it's been very helpful because engineering is obviously quite a logical practice. Something either is or isn't working, and I think that helps when it comes to figuring out your strategy. I think when you go into, say, you're manufacturing something in engineering, you've got a set plan and you're following the plan. And if it doesn't work, you change one bit of the plan and continue until it does work.
Yeah,
I think that's very important for a strategy, because obviously some people change their strategy after 2 trades. They might have taken 2 losses and like, I'm changing my strategy, or they might just stick with it even though it's quite clearly not working.
Yeah.
So you've got to be able to adapt, but not too quickly, I think. And I think that's been helpful.
I think the element of consistency there is really, really, really important too, isn't it? Like knowing, right, have I given myself enough time? Have I tested this? Have I done the process long enough to determine whether this is profitable, and then been able to determine the consistency off the back of that? And I think when we talk about consistency, then we can kind of say, well, as traders, obviously consistency is the number one rule of the game. But in your opinion, what do you think traders need to have to make sure that they have longer term consistency, long term sustainability? What would you think are the characteristics that traders should have if they're looking at having a longer term goals or objectives in mind?
I think the most important thing is obviously the mental aspect. You've got to understand that you will lose at some point.
Yeah.
And you could lose 50-60% of the time. But if your strategy is, say, your risk reward's 2 to 1, or 1 to 2, I should say, sorry, then you only need to win, in excess of 40% of the trades to be profitable. And I think that's what gets a lot of people down. That was what got me down originally. I was like, I'm losing 7 out of 10 trades, but I was getting good, 1 to 3 risk rewards on them, which if I'd stuck at, that would have been very profitable. It only needed to be 33% or something hit rate.
Yeah.
So I think people need to understand that, firstly, that it doesn't really matter how many times you lose if your risk reward's good enough, and vice versa. If you've got a good hit rate, then your risk reward could be more, 1 to 1. You only have to be in excess of 50% then. But I think that's what puts a lot of people off.
Yeah, definitely. Interesting. Well, that's quite interesting. And then I suppose as well, like I suppose with trading, you've got the discipline, you've got the mindset, you've got the risk, you've got the strategy. But there is also the good side to trading too. So I suppose, what do you enjoy most about trading from your own journey?
I think the thing I've enjoyed most is the outlook it gives you on life. Sounds quite philosophical, but it makes you more logical. I think, you're out in every day, something goes wrong and you're like, oh well, that's out of my control, continue. Or that was good, but on to the next. It stops you getting caught up in the moments. You might be having a bad day and you're like, well, there's 364 more days this year. So I think it gives you a better mindset about your everyday life once you've gone through the trials and tribulations.
Yeah. Well, if you don't succeed in trading long term, you can always take up philosophy anyway. That's for sure. That's for sure. Brilliant. So, yeah, exactly. Brilliant. So I suppose where do you see yourself? Have you longer term goals and objectives now? Now that you've gotten your learning, or obviously continual learning is obviously a thing, but now that you've gotten yourself up to a level where you're sustainable and starting to show progression and profitability, where is your objectives now for the next 12 months? Or do you look at yourself and say, well, this is where I'd like to be a year down the line? Do you have those objectives in mind, or do you have plans or ideas going forward for what you kind of where you want to be after certain dates?
So I say always, the last couple of years, I've planned out what I'd like to achieve by the end of year of trading, and the end of last year was to get funded with a good prop firm, might I add. Not just I've been with a few and hit and miss, but I think my goals have changed slightly because with previous prop firms I've been with, they were quite big, faceless, prop firms. It's just all automated, no human interaction. And at that time, I was like, well, I'll just take my profit, however frequently I make it, and put it into my own trading account and build a big personal trading account. But when I came to Alpha, I've obviously been speaking with yourself and Alex and a few other guys in the chat, and it feels more homely, I think, the word to use. So I'd like to stay with Alpha as long as possible and just build up the accounts, scale up or get to a certain point, because I'm on a 50k at the moment, make enough profit from that and then buy a 200 perhaps, but
scale up.
Yeah, it's changed. Yeah. So I'd like to stay around for a while.
Yeah, I think the longer term goal, I think with anyone, is accrue as much capital, accumulate capital preservation, but capital accumulation as well at the same time. Yeah. I think that's really, really what's important for most. So it's really, really good. So I suppose obviously markets may change, volatility may change, narratives may change, but I think it's important to have those kind of longer term kind of aspirations, having those goals, because I think that's where people tend to lose focus. I'm sure you'd probably agree with that as well. Yeah. Brilliant. So, well, that's obviously very, very great conversation today. And James, thank you very, very much for joining us. So obviously for those who are watching, we will obviously get this up on our social media platforms as well. So you can listen to the playback and obviously take maybe some words of influence, maybe that might help your own journey. Particularly with that EA, you'll probably get a couple of questions now today on that. So don't be surprised about that. But
far away.
Obviously, best of luck with everything in 2023. I hope obviously you continue to progress with us and obviously continue to succeed. So best wishes for 2023 as well. And it'll be good to maybe touch base in 3 or 6 months' time to see how your journey is developing too. That would be pretty good. That would be pretty cool as well.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I'd like to hopefully see you guys at some of the events that you run as well, which would be good to touch base in person and stuff like that. That's why it's a nicer prop firm, because you can face to face.
Yeah, exactly. Brilliant. Well, look, have a great day. All right. And thanks a million, everyone, for watching as well. Take care.